In this adventure, we wander the vast marshes of Fobbing, close to the Essex Thames estuary, in search of the ruins of its forgotten heritage, spanning from agriculture to explosives manufacture and even wartime defence. Some of these remains are previously undocumented. Hi there, it's Liam and Joe. Today we are out somewhere quite local to us. We are on Fobbing Marshes. We grew up just over the water on Canvey Island. Today we are going to be looking around some very interesting bits and pieces from World War One and World War Two. We're also joined by some special guests, aren't we?
We are. So this morning we're joined by Em and Stu. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us.
So today we're going to be seeing World War One and a World War Two site.
Lovely.
Tell us a bit about the places that you go to.
We actually go to places like Haysborough, down tunnels. We're going to be doing Kent soon, aren't we?
Yeah, anything military.
Anything
really.
military.
That's our main interest.
Yeah, we do. We used to do the Urbic stuff, but it's
We
mostly
don't do so much
history now.
but we
so-
like anything outdoors really.
Yeah,
Any sort of historical buildings and
things like that.
Yeah.
We can identify certain buildings and not. So this is what we're doing today.
a bit of
with
wild
you.
camping sometimes.
Yeah.
Walks.
Yeah.
Exploring anything really, isn't it?
Yeah, just getting in your car, putting a bit of petrol in, and off you go. That's it.
We've been following you for a while. We've probably seen hours worth of your videos. What's your favourite explore that you've ever done?
Today, no, mate.
I didn't really understand because what the rest of it was done at the same time.
Yeah.
And they had one of those massive sweet.
So here we've got an old farmhouse. This is Ousdam Farm, and this is one of the sort of traditional historic farms of this area, because there used to be a very, very old farmhouse, probably dating back several hundred years on this site, up until probably not all that long ago. But what happened to that building, I don't know. All that I know is that this newer structure is now left on site and it's also abandoned. So we're having a look in the old farmhouse. It looks in a bit of a bad way, but actually not as bad as I thought.
1930s, isn't it?
Do you reckon? Yeah.
Looking at the doors.
Electrics on the electric fences are still working around the perimeter.
Oh, right. So they still use this then, you reckon?
Yeah. Well, not the house, but the actual electric perimeter fences for the animals are all still running. So it's still
Right.
working.
This is a bit, well, I say more pleasant in here. Don't know if that's really the right word, but a bit less smashed up. Yeah, they reckon 1930s Em and Stu, perhaps this was built. Possibly, I reckon, 30s, 40s, something like that.
Could make quite a nice little country retreat if it's done up a bit. Original floorboards and
Yeah.
that still in place.
Nice bit of sort of yellow paint. Very 20th century, yeah. As for the rest of this place, I don't know what's the score is with it. Jesus, there's noises and all sorts going on. Cobwebs.
Loft up there.
There is a loft, yeah. It's actually in fairly reasonable nick. And look at this bad boy. Now that is definitely a bit 1930s. Nice old fireplace. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
On the site of Ousdam Farm, there's actually a couple of World War II defences left over. And I can imagine that was because these marshes were very flat ground where German paratroopers may have landed in the invasion of Britain, which never luckily happened in 1940. So these defences were probably put here to defend the marshes from that purpose.
So as you carry along the footpath after the farmhouse, you get to this, a Type 24 Peelbox. Now when we last visited this site in the winter, all of this land was so flat, it wasn't overgrown like it was today, and we could actually get into it. Probably can today, although it might be a little bit challenging. But as I say, Type 24 Peelbox, and it's in quite a good condition. Still got the slits there for firing out of, and you can sort of see on the sides of it where it's got the sort of marks on it where it would have originally been cast.
Let's go and have a look. So this is another World War II defence. This is a spigot mortar and this was used by the Home Guard for defence on the ground. But this was using the Blacker bombard, which was, I think, that the last black powder weapon in the British forces in service. And it was a last-ditch weapon. It basically looked like a giant apple on the end of a stick, like a big explosive ball on a stick. And you'd put it onto this sort of firing mechanism. You'd aim it, you'd have some kind of range thing, and you just pull a trigger and it would fire it out and it would blow off in the distance. But I don't imagine it would be very accurate whatsoever.
Inside there, rather than this actually being a solid structure, it's actually kind of just filled up with rubbish. There's bricks in there, lumps of concrete, and all of this stuff is likely to have been put in when this was first installed, rather than someone just putting it in now, as it's actually within this metal cage which is reinforcing this. So not quite as sturdy as you'd think.
So we've got here some sort of circular, what looks like some sort of underground vessel. We think that it could be connected to a World War II bombing decoy. And this is what you can see over there. We've got the main shelter there, and then we've also got some sort of store for some kind of fuel. And basically this would have been for the oil refineries at Shellhaven and Corriton, which you can see the remnants of in the distance. In World War II, those would have been prime targets for bombing. And so, to stop the Luftwaffe from bombing it, they basically set fire to the fields nearby with fuel and other kinds of flammable materials, and they would have controlled this from this site, and it would have glowed in the dark basically from above as the Luftwaffe were coming over, and they would have seen it and thought that the target was already bombed, and they would have carried on further to London without releasing their bombs, or at least that was what they hoped.
Some distance from the Type 24 Peelbox and we've come to our target.
Joe's sending up the drone.
The QF-type Shellhaven Fobbing bomb decoy was constructed to defend the oil refinery south. Today, an oil storage bay and a night shelter containing an operations and engine room remain. These connected to pools of oil electrically ignited to simulate burning oil tanks. The decoy was known to have been operational by August 1941, although this would have been too late for the peak of air raids.
Let's go in, check it out. Now Joe and I have been here once before, but we didn't film it, and I think it's only fair that we do. So, as it's a local one, let's go and check it out. Got some kind of entrance doorway that's, I'm guessing the door's now gone. So this first room, in here I guess they would have had the generator fueling the whole operation. Got the doorway. We've got some sort of hole in the wall, perhaps where a pipe would have left, going out into the fields, I don't know. And there's some sort of divider here where there would have been a brick walled off section. You can just see the base of that running up the wall, and perhaps the generator would have sort of sat in that corner. On the walls there's actually little bits of wood set into the wall. Not really sure what that's for, but obviously that went into the construction, and we're not actually alone in here. Nature has also come along. This on the ceiling is actually some sort of fibreboard of some kind, some sort of wood chips. That's unusual. It looks almost later than World War II to me. Perhaps it was put in here after. And look there, the butterflies are loving it. They all look very dark because obviously the outside of their wings is dark. Their colours, they're probably peacock butterflies, so they're a lot more colourful. But look, this is the next room. I believe this is the operations room or the shelter. And we can see we've got sort of steps going up here, up onto the roof. There is some sort of material over the roof, over the ceiling. Hopefully not asbestos, but who knows. And there's the escape hatch going up there. And we've got the ladder, so that's if bombing kicked off
and the crew had to get out and they couldn't leave via the usual entrance. There's a pipe there. Guessing that would have gone out into the fields. Got a couple of holes for observation or for defence or even for the fuel operations going on here. And there's also remains of a sort of concrete render which would have gone up the walls just at the base there. Apart from that, there's not much in here, to be honest, but it is a very interesting piece of history, very relevant to the area and its defence as an industrial region back in the Second World War. Interesting to see, and hopefully if the bombing had passed and the crew hadn't been blown up that were operating the decoy, they could have walked out into the fields of Fobbing, onto the marshes, safe and alive. But if you do look at RAF aerial photography of the area in World War II, you'll find an awful lot of bomb craters in these fields, as well as a lot of anti-glider ditches. So this was a very defended area that also suffered a lot from bomb strikes. So as much as the decoy probably did deter some planes in the early war, I think they probably did clock on. And at one point the Thames Haven refinery was struck by an air raid quite badly. So we're now looking for the remains of Kynochs explosives manufacturing site, and this was built, I think, was it 1896, did you say?
I think 1895 it was built, opened in 97 or 8.
Cool. So yeah, so it's our late Victorian explosive factory, and they made Kynochs that actually made 303 rifle bullets used in the Lee Enfield rifle, which you might know is the British standard issue rifle of the time used in World War One. It was a Birmingham company, but they had a big factory here on the site of the oil refinery, and there's a couple of bits left that very, very few people know exist. But we're going to try and find them because we came here in the winter, it was a lot less overgrown, and we're in a ditch. It's full of brambles, so fingers crossed we can find something, but no promises. So here we go. This is a bit of history that practically no one knows about. First World War history, just left. Now this is marked on a map from the early 1900s as a water tower. Perhaps this wood went up into a tower, but look, it's some sort of water reservoir. I guess, you know, because it was an explosive site, they had to have water to hand for fire safety probably. What do you reckon, Joe?
Yeah, as you say, it looks like the foundations of what would have been a water tower. Slightly odd how the bottom there is wood, whereas around it is concrete. You'd expect the tower to maybe be concrete. I don't know, maybe the tower was literally on top here and some of it was filtered out. I'm not sure, but this is definitely the site, so it's really promising.
I think it's safe to say we have actually found something that furthers our knowledge about this site, because a lot of the local historians, you know, they're not able to get out into these remote places and check this stuff out.
I think we want to keep going straight ahead, and then it should be ahead and on the right.
Sounds good. We've got the Fobbing flood barrier in the distance there. You can just see that. That's an iconic landmark, and probably one of the few landmarks in the area apart from the oil refinery, which is to our left. So we are fully out in the middle of nowhere in the old Thames wasteland, as we often find ourselves. So another remnant, we've got this sort of pond here, which I believe it is marked as on some old maps. But I do know that some of the explosive materials, like gun cotton, they'd wash out in ponds. Whether that was what they handled here, I don't know. But at Wat Tyler Country Park, which is just some distance up there inland, they handled that. And that was another explosives factory. So there was a lot of them in the Thames. So we've found an amazing little gem here. It doesn't look like much. You've got these concrete strips running down here, which you'd think, that's probably not much. Believe it or not, this is what the wooden walkways running around the whole site connecting the buildings would have been sat upon. And these were built because wood would obviously not create sparks, whereas if people were walking through the ground and on gravel, then any explosive remnants attached to their boots, caught on their shoes from the workers, could have set them on fire or created an explosion, and perhaps that could have set the whole place up. So they had these wooden walkways to be spark proof, and those would have sat upon this concrete, and you can see a linear feature in the soil, in the grass changes shade, it's a bit raised there, and that is where one of these walkways would have gone. And again, I think practically nobody knows these exist. Fascinating bit of history. And you can see they're quite coarse stones, suggesting its age. It's not sort of, you know, mid 20th century. This is Victorian, Edwardian at latest. Would have gone down there in the line. You can see the concrete here. There's one there, there's another there, and then you can see it gets to a corner where it would have turned, or there would have been a building. And here you can see one of the pieces, and it's actually got a metal pin sticking out the top, and this would have actually held the wooden boards on top of the walkways, and it goes into the bushes there, carries on. So it would have supported quite a large walkway. This looks like a sort of square piece. Perhaps there would have been a building on there. You can actually get a great view of it looking down there actually. Look, you can see all the concrete in a line. But this is an amazing bit of history from the First World War and just prior to it. So we've got a little extra here, and it's some kind of abandoned barn. How old it is, I don't know. There's various materials here. The actual timber looks quite old, but then there's some newer corrugation put on the top, and some sort of mid 20th century pieces there perhaps. Perhaps it's newer than that. Let's take a look inside. Whether this would have been sort of stables at one point, I don't know.
Slab down here, dated 79.
There we
So,
go.
that's one of the most interesting things here.
Yeah, 1979. So I think that's going to conclude our little walk around Fobbing Marshes. It's a very historic area. We've got history from all across the 20th century that we've seen today. Fascinating stuff.
And of course we haven't been alone on this explore. We've been joined by and Stu, guys. Thanks ever so much
Thank
for
you.
tagging along. It's been a really good day.
Really
Of course,
appreciate you asking us along.
check out their channel. They've got loads of really good videos on there, and hopefully many more explores to come.
Yes, definitely,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
So thanks for watching, guys. Do check them out, and we'll see you on the next adventure. Bye.